I don't think really as advertisers, I don't think we create culture. I think we borrow it.
Hi, I'm Neil Perkin, the host of Think with Google Firestarters. And Firestarters is a series of insightful conversations with the interested and the interesting of the advertising, marketing and innovation communities. And today I'm lucky enough to be speaking with Sophie Lewis. So Sophie is the Chief Strategy Officer at M&C Saatchi. She's been named as one of Adland's most influential figures in Campaign UK's A-List 2024. So Sophie, welcome to Firestarters. Delighted to have you. And if I can begin by just asking straight away, what is your provocation for the Firestarters audience?
Yeah. Hi, Neil. Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here, first of all. My provocation is that all great advertising is just a matter of taste. And I think I've been thinking quite a lot about taste recently, mostly to do with Charles Saatchi, in fact, and the beginnings of Saatchi, and then more notably for me, I guess, M&C Saatchi. But before that, somebody once told me, somebody I admire greatly, that I had good taste in advertising, and that was my skill. And at the time, I was incredibly insulted. I thought, what do you mean I've got good taste? Is that it? You know, I'm not some, oh God, intellectual genius or strategic, brilliant mind. I've just got good taste. And it felt like I was being completely rubbished by that person, although I don't think they meant it that way. And over the years, I've reflected more and more on the idea of taste and why it's important in communications. And I think actually, I don't see it as a insult now, having spent many years thinking about it. And I actually think that taste is incredibly important when you're thinking about ideas, and not just in the genesis of ideas, but also in the execution of ideas. And I think it is fundamental to understanding audiences and the tastes of those audiences when you are communicating with them. So yeah, what started as a sort of and to the Saatchi point, I mean, obviously, really, I would say that Charles Saatchi was, anything recent aside, I think at the beginning of M&C, and certainly in his art collecting days and curating days, he was a tastemaker. He basically created an entire genre of art within the UK, found people from goldsmiths and sort of created the group called the Young British Artists. And I think that idea, I'm not comparing myself, by the way, to Charles Saatchi in any way, but I think that idea of taste and his personal taste, because he said that he chose art because he chose things that made him feel something, and that felt fresh and different, and though he hadn't seen them before, I think are very much principles that I think about. I didn't know they were the principles by which he chose art, but they are the principles that I think about when I am looking at ideas for the first time. So yeah, there's a bit in there and it's a bit jumbled, but I think that idea of taste, yeah, I don't see as an insult anymore. And I think the idea of taste making, or understanding who the tastemakers are in the world in relation to audiences, is incredibly important, and as important for a strategist like me as anyone else.
Yeah, thank you. It's a fascinating provocation. I'd like to sort of ask, if I may. So when you think about the best advertising, and so I think from what I'm hearing there, you're saying that sort of clients, agencies who really create the best advertising are able to understand the taste of their audience and society. So be a bit more specific. What do you actually mean by the taste of an audience, or the taste of society?
I suppose what I mean is where influences are coming from. And I think they all come from culture, to the painting point. I mean, again, I never really admire people who say that they have been obsessed with advertising forever, or they always wanted to get into advertising. It always seems an odd thing to me when you meet people, it's mostly in interviews, and they say, I've always wanted to be in advertising. I saw this ad when I was 7, and since then I've been obsessed with it. I always think immediately, oh no, that you're not the person for us. I'm much more interested in the people who say, I'm interested in art and music or gaming or fashion or film or fiction or dance or anything else cultural that they feel strongly about and are influenced by. And for me, that idea of taste is always about, back to the Charles point, it is to do with largely cultural influences that are happening within society. Because I don't think really as advertisers, I don't think we create culture. I think we borrow it. I see myself as a magpie largely. I'm a thief of cultural influence, and I love watching things, seeing things, listening to things, reading things. High, low, I don't really care. My husband laughs at me for reading the Sidebar of Shame, and whilst I hate the Daily Mail as a publication, I feel that, you know, understanding who's who on Love Island or what Kim Kardashian is wearing is as informative in relation to taste and culture as you know, who wins at the Brits or what is happening in a latest production at Covent Garden. So for me, it is about understanding culture in its sort of biggest, broadest sense, but it's also understanding the influence of specific things happening in culture on specific target audiences.
I mean, it's interesting there you sort of talk about the understanding culture in the broadest sense. And, you know, there has been, you know, some talk about how advertising exists in a bit of a bubble. Yeah, perhaps a London bubble.
Yeah.
Or it's like, you know, you're culturally, you're sort of, you have your sort of own version of what culture is. And it's difficult to get outside of that bubble. So how do you think, if you're a planner, strategist, you can really connect into that broader culture?
Well, I really love people. So, and I love listening to people. It's funny. I always think that sort of, it's there are definitely how would I describe them, sort of star planners or strategists in the sort of world currently, who sort of have made recently a kind of big deal about understanding people. And it always makes me laugh a bit, because I think, oh well, what were you doing before, if you're only now understanding people? And there's always big deals about going to this place or that place. It's usually Manchester or Leeds or Stoke or wherever, and those things are sort of billed as, oh, I don't know, some incredibly unusual understanding of the world. And I think if you weren't trying to understand the world as greater than, frankly, a rather inward focused, totally self-obsessed and narcissistic grouping of advertising people in London as a strategist, then what on earth were you doing? So I think, you know, that idea of really, I mean, I don't, you know, the bubble is a hideous and true thing, but anyone who isn't spending time in front rooms and on Zoom groups now, which is great, because obviously the world of Zoom and COVID actually has opened up places to me that I can see at the and hear and listen to at the drop of a hat. If you're not doing that as a strategist, then you know, I don't really know what you're spending your time doing. So there isn't really a substitute, I don't think, for listening to people. I like poking around in their houses. The other thing I do quite a lot is loiter in supermarkets and shops in general, because that is where people are. And I don't, you know, I think there's a slightly odd conundrum always in advertising and communications and in business, that the more successful you become and the more wealthy you become, the more removed you are from everyday society. It always seems odd to me, you know, you get driven around in cars and you fly first class and you don't have any contact with what I would describe as real life. And I don't consider myself one of those people. I don't have any ambitions to live like that. I think part of my job and my life is to be in a place. I live in Brighton, which, you know, is not to say that that's I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that I'm a woman of the people, but I spend a lot of time walking, going on public transport, loitering in supermarkets, listening to people, because I like it. It's not a hardship or a difficulty. It's because I think my job is to understand what people think, not what I think. And I also think for clients, that is your job. It is incredible to me. Clients often say, oh, we really, really understand our audiences, and we've, and then you say, well, when did you last talk to a person who hasn't got any money and is going to the supermarket with 10 quid in their purse because that's what they've got? And the answer is often, well, I haven't talked to one of those people for a really long time, or I haven't listened to a person like that for a really long time. So I don't know, I see it as sort of fundamental to my job to really understand, coming back to that tastemaker point, you've got to understand what those people are interested in and what they're listening to and who they're being influenced by. And yeah, I don't know, I find that enjoyable on every level. Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting when you said earlier about people wanting to get into the industry, moving on from that kind of like, I've always wanted to work in advertising, to really thinking about, I've always really wanted to understand culture. And really what you're talking about there is actually having a passion to understand how people make decisions, what influences them, the kind of taste, as you put it. So is that really what you mean by that?
Yeah, totally. I think all I'm interested in when I'm thinking about ideas is, how will this do what I need it to do? And largely that's how I think in the end, that's about how am I going to move people with this? Are they going to engage with this in the first place? And are they going to be moved by it in some way in order to do what I want them to do? So that makes me sound incredibly manipulative, but that's broadly our job, right? And yeah, that's what I'm always thinking about. How will this idea elicit the response that I want it to elicit? And so yes, fundamental to that is understanding how people will respond to ideas and feel about ideas. And I think that is, very directly connected to what influences them, what they like, what they don't like, how they live. All that sort of stuff I just think is fascinating and is just fundamental to creating brilliant ideas. What I don't mean is that those people are going to tell you the ideas that you need to feed them in order to get them to do what you want, but they are going to tell you about their lives and about their fears and their dreams and their aspirations and what's on their mind on a Tuesday afternoon and what they're going to have for tea tomorrow. And all those things I find endlessly interesting, I guess, and yeah, understanding what they're listening to, the fact that Beyonce's moved on to country and western, whatever it might be, all those things are going to influence the types of ideas I think are going to work against them and get them to do whatever it is we want them to do. So yeah, that's sort of fundamental to me, I think.
So to be a good strategist, if you think about the kind of inputs that you have as a strategist, are you saying there that really you need to think about observation and ethnography, not just about kind of research and focus groups?
I mean, it's really interesting. I think I don't know if I feel like it's Jeff Bezos, but somebody incredibly data focused talked about the fact that if he had two opposing ideas and one came from data and one came from quant and one came from qual, he would go with the qual insight. And for me, you have to really get down into granularity. I think often in ideas there is understanding what quant data is telling you. Mostly, let's be really honest, from clients, it's telling us what people are buying, and really from a client point of view, that's mostly what it's going to tell you. When they say, oh, we've got all the data is going to pertain to what people are doing in relation to their product or service. What that gives you usually no indication of is why they're doing that thing and what else around that are they doing or not doing that can help us with whatever we're trying to do, which is change their minds or get them to do something differently. And I think those types of things, that type of insights bandied around, isn't it, till we're blue in the face. But I think really getting down into degrees of granularity is often where incredible ideas come from. So yeah, I you know, I've had some of my most enjoyable moments poking around in people's cupboards at breakfast time in Croydon, or looking in people's fridges. I remember for Boots actually going into people's bathrooms and looking in their bathroom cupboards, and then they would talk us through their makeup bags. You know, that type, you cannot get that. You cannot get the level of understanding and how people feel about what they're doing and the whys of what they're doing without getting down into that level of granularity, I think. So yeah, I love all that stuff. And you have to be able to use those two sets of information, because that's all it is, right? Data's just information. You just got a load of it together. You've got to use the big numbers. You've got to use broadly what people are doing and how they're spending their money, or the movement of the market, along with the granularity. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that makes me feel excited.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of thought, isn't it, about the relationship between data and sort of more qualitative driven inputs, in terms of what can stimulate a breakthrough idea or a really different thought. And I mean, you were speaking very powerfully then about just those little insights that can spark a totally different thought, or a way of understanding a challenge or a problem. Do you think though that sometimes that can come from data? You see something in the data which sort of gives you a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to, it totally depends. Of course it can. I mean, you can find incredible things in data. I mean, it depends what you got to start with, and you've got to know where to look. That's the other thing. How to extract information out of data is one of the sort of, I would say, one of our biggest challenges for us and our clients, is just how one extracts that sort of something, just sort of that changes our mind about the way we think about a category or a brand or whatever it might be. But absolutely, it can come, those sorts of insights can come from anywhere. But yes, it doesn't matter what sort of level of data you're looking at, you've still got to mine, I think, and dig around a bit in order to find it out.
And just to go back to something you mentioned earlier, you said that, you know, as advertising, as agencies, you don't create culture, but you borrow from culture. And just to kind of challenge that a minute, I mean, if you think about some of the best advertising that there's been, I think I saw in one of the interviews that you did that you mentioned about the Tango campaign, the Blackcurrant Tango ad, which is just a brilliant sort of example. In a way, you could argue that is creating culture, or that it at least is becoming a part of culture. So do you accept that some of the best campaigns can do that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm being a bit dismissive, I suppose, of advertising. Yes, there are a few exceptions where I would say, my goodness me, that's really has moved something on. I mean, the other one I was thinking about yesterday, it must be an anniversary, is Guinness Surfer, and I think it's what would it be, 25th, 30th? I don't know. Anyway, it's an anniversary of Guinness Surfer. And for me, there are very few examples of ideas, perhaps executions rather than ideas, actually, where yes, they have created something that nobody has seen anything even vaguely like it before. I guess arguably Gorilla would be another one of those, where I really look at them and think, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. But I do think, by and large, you know, the job of a strategist, I think, really, and perhaps creatives as well to a certain extent, is to make connections between things. And that's why, for me, the cultural point is so important. The cultural inputs are so important, is because I've seen many times over ideas come together because a person has said, oh, I've seen this thing and the brand problem is this, or we're trying to do that. And if you put those two things together, you get something that feels exactly right for the brand. But yes, you're right. There are a few where I would say genuinely, I think they created something that probably or a way of thinking about communications that didn't exist before. And
just to sort of build on that, because I think, you know, talking about taste, you know, a lot of what those kind of campaigns have in common is you know, like you said, it was implementation, it's execution, isn't it? It's like, it's just a brilliant insight, but it's also the execution of those campaigns, and a brilliant director and script and just concept and everything. So the creative integrity and you know, having that kind of ambition and boldness on behalf of the client to actually sign that off. So just on that, how do you get those kinds of ideas and those sort of creative integrity, sort of brilliant standout ideas signed off with a client?
Wow, God. I mean, there are a few probably. I mean, Guinness Surf was one of them. The other one, I joined BBH. I think that Levi's Odyssey had just been finished or was in the process of being finished. It's the Levi's ad, for people who don't know it. Lots of people don't know it now because it's old, where two people, it was for Levi's engineered jeans, the worst name for a product ever, which I think BBH proudly came up with because nobody in Europe could say engineered. And in it, two people run through, a boy and a girl, a woman and a man, run through walls and out ultimately into the air, into the sky, and that is it. And my understand, directed by Jonathan Glazer, I believe, and it's still one of my most admired pieces of communication of all time, not least because my understanding is the team who I knew back in the day, and I never saw the script, but I understand that the script said something along the lines of, we see two people and they run through walls. And the making of that obviously was the most incredible. Well, now I guess it wouldn't be incredible. The execution of it wouldn't be incredible anymore, because actually executing two people running through walls in the way that it's executed would be much more straightforward. But I often think about the selling of that script and what happened. I know nothing of it. I never inquired further as to how it happened. But to be honest, I think that most extraordinary pieces of work are sold through an incredibly trusting relationship in the first place. I mean, as I get older, probably belatedly, I'm something of a slow starter on most things, but the importance of relationships and trust in selling extraordinary creative work cannot be underestimated. I mean, it is everything. The setting the conditions for selling work like that, and continuing to sell through execution, through choosing a director, through filming, through editing, through post-production. I mean, those things it is very time consuming, incredibly expensive. It must feel like an eternity to a client. And I think the nature of that relationship has to be so strong in order to get to points like that. I would say that trust is, has to be fundamental. It's got to be there in order for anyone to bring about a piece of work that is so different, to your point. If those really do make culture, to do that, to risk, to do something that feels like an incredible risk because you don't have reference points for it. They're often the most exciting ideas. When you can't find the reference points, you're like, oh gosh, I feel very nervous because we've got nothing to show, right? You can't show anything because it doesn't exist. So I think, it takes incredible tenacity, incredible patience, incredible ability to put yourself in the shoes of a client in order to think about how they can best sell that in, and the nature of the return you think that they are going to get, and can try and predict for an idea of that sort of I don't know, size and scale, I guess. But it's an extraordinary team effort as well. That's the other thing. I mean, the importance of your disciplines working together in trying to bring that about, and that is where obviously the skill of your production department is again, has to be extraordinary. But again, it's where so many pieces of communication, I think you've got, let's say you've got a brilliant strategy and you think you've got a brilliant idea, in that it's been written as an idea that everybody goes, this is fantastic. I always think advertising is like there are so many points in the development of a campaign at which things can go wrong.
Right.
And those things going wrong can be the thing that takes your brilliant idea from something brilliant to just and maintain it, knowing what those things are that will make those fundamental differences, and being able to maintain and keep on the right track is, you know, for me, that's sort of almost everything in what we do in relation to those big ideas that people haven't seen before. It requires, you know, a sort of teamwork like you've never seen. It requires vision and people's understanding of that vision. I think vision is an underrated thing in the sort of specifically related to the creative process in agencies. Teams having vision, sharing that with a director having vision, and that vision being something that we can try and all start to imagine, because it's hard. It's why I'm a planner, not a creative, is because I think I can get to springboards, but I can't get to the magic that comes. And it is quite like magic, right? The leaps that creative people can make that I'm always hoping for are things that are beyond what I can imagine. That's what I'm always hoping for when I put a brief into a team. So the process of making those types of work is epic. It's you know, it is an incredible journey, but there is only one way to get there for me, and that is with the team, agency and client as one. You know, and to be prepared to have, I think, a lack of comfort probably at times within that, which again is not something that's very popular to talk about, but discomfort or sort of or debate.
I think that's actually a really good point, because you could say, like, the foundation of trust. I mean, I love your thoughts here about the kind of shared vision to prevent a good, you know, a standout creative idea from being watered down. And having that kind of shared vision across the client and the agency, but also then perhaps allowing for comfort with dissent. You know, the ability to just debate and disagree with each other, because that can help solve problems better. So I mean, is there a way, you mentioned trust earlier, but is there any other way in which you can sort of set a relationship up with a client in which you can have that kind of comfort with dissent?
Well, do you know what? I think this always comes down to the belief from a client and the belief in an agency that what you are going to do, what you're all trying to do, is the right thing for the brand. I've always come from that place. So it's why I mean, awards are sort of a necessary evil, but for me, awards are an output. They are not a thing that one tries to get to. If you enter awards and you make a brilliant thing, brilliant, that's nice, but that's not the aim. The aim is brilliant, effective advertising. It is designed to do something. It is business driving. And I think that really, I know it sounds really, really obvious, but having the best interest of the brand and the idea at heart is what has to allow, it's got to allow, that's part of trust, and it's also about being honest, but it's also about people being aligned around that. So I find, I've worked in a lot of agencies, and I think that often there are different agendas. People have different things in the front of their minds. It's not because they're bad people or anything. It's just because that's what drives them. It's what motivates them. But I've seen the best results when there is none of that, when people are able to put their personal agendas, egos, whatever you want to call it, aside, and only think about the best for the idea and the best for the brand. Because if you do that, you can allow, it's like creative reviews, it's like dissent and arguments in creative reviews. I don't mind it. It's a weird thing. Some people really hate it, and it's not very trendy anymore to have arguments and fall out or be angry. Those things have sort of become have sort of fallen by the wayside. I don't really have that as my sort of belief. What I have is that if the idea and the brand are central to your thinking and you are doing the right thing by the idea and the right thing by the brand, then you should be able to dissent and to disagree and to debate, because I think that will bring about a better outcome. Consensus is a interesting thing, but ultimately you have to get to the point where someone has a vision and they are going to follow through on that vision. And I think my job is largely to back them and to go, yeah, I understand why that's the vision, and I will do what I can to support that. But yeah, I'm not anti dissent or debate or whatever in the development of ideas. I think it's a necessary thing. Yeah.
And just going back to
probably make me incredibly unpopular now I've said that.
no, not at all. I completely agree with that. But just going back to the taste thing, because taste is quite an intangible thing, right? So
yes, totally.
Any sort of advice here for how you would bring it to life? How can you bring that sort of that flavor, the nuance of it to life for a client, or to convince? What ways in which you can do that?
Yeah, I think again you have to. I think both with clients actually and with creative teams, because I think often you have to work both sides, right? What you're doing is you're bringing consumer voices, thoughts, whatever, to both your clients and to your creative teams. I like to get teams as involved as I possibly can in seeing the consumers that they're talking to. But if that's not possible, you have to be representative of what those people in the broadest sense and in the granularity really think and feel about the category, the brand, related areas that you think you might go into. So yeah, I feel very uncomfortable. I've always have done. I never feel comfortable going into a brief or writing a brief or writing a strategy without having listened, watched, whatever, some people use the product, talk about the product, whatever. So for me, it's absolutely about taking those learnings and making sure that the group of people you're talking to are really aligned, because they need to understand what the taste of those people is. It isn't about them. It's not about the creative sitting at their desk or whatever, and it's not about the client sitting in their office. It is about them understanding the taste makers within the audience. Who are they listening to? Who are they influenced by? What are they listening to on a daily basis that will influence, that we can use within our idea to influence what they're doing? So yeah, I think you sort of have to be that person who's always trying to remind people of both what it is that you're trying to do and what those people are like that you're trying to get to do it, probably.
Yeah. And I loved your point earlier about making connections between things, and there's definitely something here about combinatorial creativity. It's like how you can connect two disparate ideas and make something new, entirely new, for a breakthrough in how you see something. So as a strategist, I guess what you're saying there is that the breadth of inputs that you have is really important here, but also the ability to make those connections, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to, whatever way you do it, some people have diaries and things. I now have, bits of paper, but mostly I have my phone, which has, I don't know how many notes on it. And I don't know, I was having a competition about photographs the other day and how many photos we had on our phones. Let's have a look. I wonder if it'll give me a number. I don't know if it gives me a number. Oh, here we are. 64,000 photos I've got on my phone, and 64,000. So yes, I don't know what that number rates as, but what those are pictures of are not things that I've gone, oh, that's a lovely photo, I'm going to take it. They're things that I've taken pictures of because I want to remember them and use them in some way. So I'm just looking at recent pictures, and they include some typography from a building in Brighton called Embassy Court, because I was thinking about design language for a project I was working on. They are a picture of a Taylor Swift, which my daughter has now put on as my phone saver. There's an article here which is about Soho House and the chain of private members clubs report 92 million lost despite 20% rise in membership, which makes me personally happy, but that's just not another bit of whatever. And I mean, all over the place. There's a quote here from a free magazine that I get on a Friday with the Standard, which is sort of about, it's like the Red Bull thing. It's about sport and sort of whatever the word is, endurance cycling and whatever. And it says, science doesn't lie, there are no miracles on race day. It's about training and the fact that you need to fuel yourself and listen to the science in relation to your body if you're doing endurance sport. And then there are pictures of Carrie Mulligan, Jamie Lee Curtis, and a woman called, I think, Greta Lee, who's in a film called Past Lives, in their Oscars dresses, because they were the best ones that I like the most. Now, none of this is particularly revelatory, but it's just to give you an indication of everything I see, everywhere I go. I take pictures of people on the tube, on the street, and all these things I will use. And in the back of my head, I'll think, oh, I've got a thing that I took a picture of that, didn't I, sometime back in, and then I'll spend forever searching through my phone or the notes or whatever, and I will find the thing and I will use it as a way with the other thing that I've got in my head to say, yeah, I think there's something here. So I think there's a strategy around this or that or whatever. So yeah, it doesn't matter what way that's what I mean when I say I'm a magpie. I'm just out there stealing stuff, and I'm going to stick that stuff together with other stuff I think about in order to get to strategies quite often. Yes.
I think it reminds me, actually, when you talk about that, it's fascinating. It reminds me of what Russell Davies said, and which was actually the inspiration for the kind of strapline for Firestarters, which was, if you want to be interesting, you be interested. Yeah. So you just notice stuff and you pay attention to stuff, and it's just a really interesting way of actually having all of that kind of a total mishmash of different things, but at some point that might be useful to make that connection. Yeah,
and I think it will be. I'm a sometime writer of poetry, bad poetry, and very irregular writer. But the other thing I use are newspaper articles and things as subject matter quite often. So yeah, I read everything. I come from Brighton, and I get on the Gatwick Express, and it had this phase of giving you free magazines, and they're things like Gardener's World or Farmer Monthly or whatever, and I'll read all those, and GQ, and everything I can possibly get my hands on online in the world, whatever. And I don't know, I'm a relentless stealer of things, information, ideas, articles, people's lives, I suppose. Because I think it's all going to come in useful somewhere. Yeah.
I love it. It's brilliant. Unfortunately, we're nearly out of time, but I have one more question, which I guess sort of builds on everything we've talked about already. So, I mean, if you were to give any advice to young strategists, planners, people looking to come into the industry, or just want to be a better planner, what kind of habits do you think you can you adopt, or can you cultivate in order to really become a better planner, and also to connect in with those tastemakers and where taste is going?
I think really be open and look around you. I think it's a head up job, really. And it's not about you, and that's the thing that I think people find weird. I mean, planning's not advertising isn't about planners, full stop, and the strategies that we write 9 times out of 10 aren't about us either. And I think the best planners, of course they do, get interested in whatever the job is in hand, right? I've become fascinated by all sorts of weird sectors that sound incredibly low interest, because I'm in them and I'm thinking about them, and I'm listening to people who are really interested in them. So I think be really interested, be really engaged, find as much stimulus as you possibly can from everywhere. When you get to a subject matter, there is so much out there that can pertain to it, literature and film and books and data and everything. That I think, there's just so much to read and think about in relation to it, that you should kind of absorb as much of that as you possibly can. Probably that would probably be my advice.
Brilliant. I love it. It's really inspiring. So thank you, Sophie, and a great sort of call to action to end the episode. So thank you very much for being a part of Firestarters. If you're listening or watching this, don't forget to subscribe, of course, and to share. But my thanks again go to Sophie Lewis for a brilliant episode. So thank you very much, Sophie.
My absolute pleasure. Really nice to meet you.